room how at like halftime he was going around to everyone saying that deep ball was there and everything. I was wondering, A, if he had relayed that to you, and B, how important is it to get that kind of input from players when they see something and then, obviously end up calling the play?
Yeah, we talk about everything, and definitely, I know Smitty was in communication with offensive coaches, what he was seeing. That's pretty standard, in between series in the locker room. You're getting everybody's input, and Smitty does a great job of communicating what he's seeing out there. He's really, he's got great football instincts and football IQ, so he gives you that confidence to be able to call things in those scenarios when he sees something. And we got a lot of guys, like we have high football IQ guys. We have a lot of guys like that, and so that gives you a lot of confidence to be able to go. Just like I kind of talked about with fourth down yesterday, like you got confidence in the players to go make a play in critical situations. Well, it's the same thing with things that they're seeing, because they have a different point of view than we have from the press box or from the sideline, because they're on the field looking at it. So it's great to be able to have players like Devontae that can relay what he's seeing, and you can trust that what he's seeing and what he's telling you is good information, and it's just like having another set of eyes from coaches out there on the field.
We'll go to Elliot and then Rube.
Hey, Nick, you guys had a ton of success passing the ball from under center yesterday. I know this might be complicated to answer without giving away game plan stuff, but is there a simple way to explain why yesterday it really worked for you guys and you used it as opposed to the first 6 games of the season?
Yeah, obviously yesterday there was a little bit more under center runs, so you mesh up your play actions and your passes with some of those things. So some things that we studied in that little mini buy, things that we looked at, and that's kind of why you got to see some of the things that you saw yesterday. It's always going to be important that your run and your play action pass game mesh together, because the defense has to go from a run defense to be a pass rusher, which is difficult for a defensive line. And we talk a lot about that as our defense. So you always want to have those things mesh together, and yesterday that meshed together the way that you saw.
We'll go to Rube and then Dave.
Hey, Nick. Obviously, you just played the Giants a couple of weeks ago. Didn't go well. How do you take that game? How do you take that game? What do you do with that game? Do you kind of emphasize the revenge factor this coming week and remind them or do you just kind of focus like it's any other game?
Focus like it's any other game. Now, it's a unique game in which that you play a team the second time. And it's even more unique that it's been 1 week of games since then. And so, just like everything we talk about, I know you guys asked me on a Thursday night or a short week or a Monday night game or a first game or a snow game. You have things that you look at in all those, because it's slightly different. But nothing changes in respect to your process. You still have a week to prepare. All the things, business as usual. But we'll have some things that we look at as coaches, knowing that we just played them, and we know that they will as well.
We'll go to Dave and then Tim.
Nick, whose idea was it to add the outside backers to the catch circuit, and how often do you make changes like that to a practice week?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary to say it's this person's idea or that person's idea. We're not looking for credit. We're looking for contribution. And that's what we try to preach to the entire team is contribution over credit. And we know how important fundamentals are. Dave, anything like, hey, we need more work at this strip attempt, then you might put a drill into your circuit there. Or, hey, we need to add this group into this, into the catch circuit, and you may do that as well. So, just because you do something a certain way and that you've had success with the fundamentals that we have doesn't mean you're constantly not thinking about how you make that process and those drills and the things that you do better, because that's all you're constantly thinking about. How do you find ways to win, and then you find ways to get better. And That's what's on our mind in everything that we do. And so there's constant tweaks and and different things to our process and to our practices to help make it the best it can be, so we can put ourselves in position to win on the weekend.
We'll go to Tim and then John.
Nick, we saw how Jalen responded to a couple losses in a row there with his performance on the field, and then as he's walking off the field, he had the comment like, "We're not losers anymore." What have you kind of learned about his response to when you guys do go through, whether it's one game or two games of losing, and sort of like his relationship to that, and that helps us understand sort of how he's wired.
Yeah, hyper competitive guy. You love that. Wants to win. A lot of people want to win, but are they willing to do the things that winning requires? And I think that's what you get with Jalen. He wants to win in the worst way, and he's willing to do anything and everything that winning requires. All that, always that path to the locker room is always an emotional time too. I don't think he can put too much stock into what we say into that. Probably have to get you guys out of that area so we can just walk freely into there and say what's on our mind at that particular case, because it's such an emotional game. But yeah, the easiest way to sum that up, Tim, is that he's just, will do everything, wants to win in the worst way, and will do everything that winning requires, which is a lot throughout the week.
We'll go to John and then Jeff McLean.
Hey, Nick, curious to what you saw from the film when it came to the running game. Obviously, it was pretty effective on that first drive and kind of waned from there, and you were able to toggle and have tremendous success in the passing game. But what you saw?
Yeah, obviously they did a good job of making some adjustments in that after that first drive to force us to try to win another way, and we did a good job as offensive coaches and with the players of countering those adjustments. That's the way football goes. It's a constant game of adjusting and seeing how they adjust. And so good job by them adjusting. We know we want to be a balanced team. But we really don't care how it looks. We'll do whatever we need to do to win each and every game, and then find ways to get better from there. And so, I encourage you guys just to focus on that. Like, focus on everything you can do to win, and focus on everything you can do to get better, and kind of understand that's how football goes. That you got to have multiple ways to win, and great job by our team and our offense to get it going a different way. But we still obviously want to be a balanced attack on offense.
We'll go to McLean and then Bo.
McLean, Nick, Howie makes a lot. You guys have had a lot of trades already. This.
You didn't like that you went with your last name?
No, I thought I liked it.
Yeah. Okay.
There's multiple Jeffs now. Nick, you guys have already had a lot of trades in the off season, and then training camp and in season. And Howie obviously trades more than any other GM in the league. Having been a position coach or coordinator, now that you're head coach, how do you deal with the conversations that need to take place with your assistants, and then how that filters down to the other players of how the trades affect them and playing time and
Sure.
and all that goes into that?
Well, first, McLean, No, well, yeah, I think it's important that you always have constant communication with your guys, on every front, because it takes everybody. And I think back to when you draft a guy high. I think back to when we drafted Jonathan Taylor in Indy. First call we make is obviously to Jonathan to tell him we drafted him, but then the next one's to Marlon Mack to let him know, that, there's always constant competition, just reminding them of the core values. There's always constant competition. Best guys will play. It doesn't mean you're any less important to this football team. I think it's always because it takes everybody, and it's going to take everybody. And so I think that constant communication with your guys is always really important there. I think Howie and I do a good job of just communicating the vision for the guys and this and that and how we may use them. I think that's always an important factor of it as well. But I think, when you're dealing with players, you're dealing with the position coaches, it always comes down to the communication and still understanding that regardless of what happens, everybody's needed. Everybody's contribution is needed, and that we'll need everybody to achieve the goals that we want to achieve. We'll need everybody involved. That doesn't mean everybody, has to like it, but I think the most important thing is that you're always open and honest and communicating. Excuse me.
We'll go to Bo and then Christian.
I thought you were gonna go Wolf for sure. Nick, end of the first half when Jalen takes the sack, 3rd and 13 with a little over 20 seconds left. How come no timeout and just head to the locker room?
Yeah. In that particular case, we have times. We have different variations of what we do on 2 minute, of how we attack. And that was a time right there where 3rd and 13, you have a timeout, you have 2 timeouts. But in that particular case, it was time to let that drive end and go to the locker room. 3rd and 13 is not a guarantee. Obviously, I believe in our team and believe in our guys at all costs, but you also got to play smart. And 3rd and 13 in that situation where you're not into a guaranteed, hey, I'm getting points if I convert this 3rd and 13. I'm still going to have work to do once I do get this 3rd and 13. The risks kind of outweigh the potential benefits from it. And at that point, you don't get it, and then you have to punt. They can, in that scenario, I know what we would do in punt, return in that scenario. And at that particular case, we played that exactly how I wanted to. Obviously, I wanted to go and get points, which is why you saw the drive go as it was. But once we did take the sack in that particular case, we played that how I wanted to play that. I have no regrets there.
And are you also factoring in how you were playing on offense at the time as opposed to just the situation?
Everything's always taken into account. Everything's always taken into account. So, but yeah, we have our stipulations, and with pretty much every scenario you could possibly imagine. But within all those situations, you take account everything that's going on in the game and how and your past experiences, to be quite honest with you.
Thank you.
We'll go to Christian and then Bob Brookover.
Hey, Nick, you guys obviously made the most of your mini bye, and you got Jalen under center, as you alluded to earlier. I was wondering if Cam's injury had anything to do with, was he under center more after that because of the injury? And just what you thought of him being under center, how comfortable he looked, and how comfortable he looked throwing the ball over the middle, and how that worked with the play action. Even though you guys weren't gaining a lot with Saquon running, you still committed to running, and how that played into the play action success.
Yeah, again, you go into a game and you're always thinking about the players that you have. We have a lot of faith and confidence in Brett Toth. That's why he was in there. And so nothing really changed when Brett got in the game because of Brett does such a good job of preparing like a starter, and he's always ready when called upon. I thought obviously Jalen played, if you have a perfect quarterback rating, you obviously played a really good game. And Jalen did. He played awesome. He played really awesome. And, but when you have a perfect quarterback rating, it's a team. That really may be a Jalen stat, but that's a team stat. It took, it took great protection, which we had really good protection against a really good front all day. It took, the commitment to the run game to try to get that going, to open some other stuff up. It took unbelievable catches by the wide receivers and route detail and discipline. And so it's just a cool stat that emphasizes the whole team. And so, we'll see how things move forward as far as what the ways we want to attack. Every game calls for different things. This is what this game called for, and this is kind of some of the things that came off of our self-scout, and we'll continue to work to find ways to get better.
We have time for 2 more, so we'll go to Bob Brookover and finish with Zach.
Hey, Nick, you got kind of a unique look on the tush push yesterday. Is that what caused that timeout before the second one? And just out of curiosity, so you called the timeout before they reviewed the catch. or they challenged the catch. Like, would you have gotten the timeout back if that had not?
I didn't call, they challenged the catch, and that was the timeout. I didn't call a timeout there.
Oh, okay, because they did. It was announced. I guess it was announced. And when you look at that, what kind of challenge does that front present? Maybe that you guys hadn't seen before.
Yeah, we're going to always see new and unique. We ran it one time and we got it one time. So we're always going to see new. And when we lined up for another one, we jumped off sides. So we really didn't get the opportunity to run it there. But we're always going to see new and unique ways. That's not new to us. When you run something when you run something the amount of times that we've ran that play, you're going to see everything. You're going to see unique ways. You're going to see teams working on that all off season to try to figure out how to stop it. I think we've seen pretty much we've seen a ton, but then they threw something a little bit different at us, and so we're ready for that. We're ready to account for that, and we're expecting those different things, and we'll have little wrinkles based off of the way they're lining up to counter some of those things.
We'll close out with Zach here.
Hey, good afternoon, Nick. I would quickly add to your answer to Tim that there's certainly nothing wrong with saying what's on your mind with us around. But we've seen, and I guess in that spirit at center, we've seen you take different approaches to the backup spot. What dictates whether you move Landon Dickerson over or put Brett in there? And then how is that approach different in a non-game day situation?
Yeah, obviously flexibility is huge, and to have guys that can play multiple spots is really important. You always need multiple centers ready on game day, just because not everybody can do that job, right? And so, again, you decide what's best in that moment. Is it Landon there, and Brett in for Landon, or do you just have one change there? I think the end of the day, what helps you make those decisions is your trust in the guys that are ready to step in. We've had, this game produces so many moments where guys are called upon that maybe you didn't think would be called upon. They're in uniform, they're ready to be called upon, but you didn't, you think about it, but you don't necessarily know what's going to happen. And we've had so many good contributions. One of the coolest pictures I have from last year is, it wasn't just the 5 offensive linemen holding up Saquon after he rushed for 2,000 yards. It was everybody that made that happen, and it wasn't just those 5 guys. It was a bunch of offensive linemen that stepped in and made plays, and it was everybody on the offense, to be quite honest. But it was a special moment between Saquon and the offensive line, and what I thought was so cool about that is that there was 8 or 9 guys in that picture, not just the 5.
Anything you can tell us on Cam?
Yeah, we'll see. Obviously haven't got with the doctors quite yet. That's a little bit later. I usually get with them a little bit after I talk to you guys. And so, we're into our game planning, just finishing up with the players right now and about to get into our game planning purposes. So it's usually the time I get with him. So we'll see. I know he'll do everything he can do to be as ready as soon as he possibly can.
Thanks, Coach. We appreciate your time today.
All right. Thanks, everybody.